For what reason did the church forbid people from learning about this powerful being? This is Abraxas. There is a hidden God who is more powerful than both God and the devil put themselves together. There is a God who is so profane that even if you were to murmur about him for generations, you would be labeled as a heretic and hunted down. However, despite the fact that the church made an effort to conceal its existence, this secret God has had an impact on a wide range of fields, including religion, secret organizations, magic rituals, and even contemporary psychology, and popular music such as Lady Gaga's song, Abracadabra. While we are in the process of uncovering the truth about this hidden God, you are going to discover truths about reality that have been carefully preserved, as well as an entirely new understanding of both yourself and the world around you. In point of fact, the key to unleashing your power is your comprehension of this God-given knowledge. I must caution you, however, that this is a highly contentious issue. To what extent, therefore, is there a power that is superior to both the God of the Bible and Satan, a power that possesses the ability to operate in both heaven and hell? Let's get started on our investigation into the mysterious God known as Abraxas. Who or what exactly is this Abraxas? We had the opportunity to travel back in time to the 2nd century CE and right into the mysterious and murky world of early Gnosticism in order to make this discovery. It is important to note that Gnosticism was a profound subterranean spiritual revolution that caused the church to feel a great deal of offended. So what exactly was it? Now, the word gnosis refers to knowledge, but it wasn't just any kind of knowledge that was being discussed here. As we speak, we are discussing hidden secrets of wisdom, the type that has the potential to either set you free or cause you to be burned at the stake. As you can see, the Gnostics held the belief that the universe was not at all what it appeared to be. They asserted that existence itself was a trap, a type of spiritual prison that was created to block people from seeing who they truly are. Who exactly is the warden of this particular prison? There is a God in the Bible. According to the Gnostics, the God of Genesis, who is also known as the creator of this universe, was actually a lower imperfect person, a false god who was referred to as the demiurge or the chief archon. And rather than adoring this envious sky daddy who had tantrums, the Gnostics desired to entirely transcend his illusion and return to the genuine divine self, which is the infinite reality of light that lies beyond this material nightmare. Gnosis, which is a form of secret knowledge, comes into play here, seeing as how they believed that by waking up to the facts that were hidden from you, you could liberate yourself from the hold that this world had on you. In order to avoid any confusion, it is essential to understand that not all Gnostics had the same beliefs during their time. On the other hand, Gnosticism was not a coherent religion that adhered to a single set of ideas. More accurately, it was more akin to a clandestine underground network of several schools, each of which had its own perspective on reality, the divine, and the means by which one may leave the material world. For instance, some people thought that the God described in the Bible was just stupid, while others considered him to be completely malevolent. And this is where Basilides comes into play, as he was the one who carried out his own covert methods of instruction. Now, Basilides was not your typical preacher by any means. He was the kind of person who founded secret organizations because his ideas were so controversial that they could lead to you being targeted for a search and seizure. In all seriousness, were you aware that some of the earliest Christians actually formed secret organizations because their beliefs were regarded as being too dangerous? He was one of them, and Basilides was another one of them. As for the content that he was teaching, it would have been enough to make your pastor's blood run cold. At one of these clandestine get-togethers, Basilides utters a statement that is absolutely devastating. Who is the deity of creation? Yes, he is not the true God. In fact, he is not even close to being the God. Basilides, on the other hand, asserted that the deity of Genesis, whom everyone worshipped, was actually a lower creature known as an archon. An archon is essentially an intermediate manager of the cosmos who was responsible for the creation of the earth, but was not the supreme authority. Basilides, on the other hand, had a name for the true supreme entity, and that name was Abraxas. Basilides wasn't just stating that Abraxas was your typical god, with a beard sitting in the sky on a cloud and shooting lightning bolts like a cranky Zeus knockoff. This is where things start to go wild, because Basilides wasn't just saying things like that. Abraxas, on the other hand, was the origin of everything, the power that dominated all in the fundamental principle of existence. Imagine for a moment that you are living in a period of time when everyone is terrified of the deity described in the Bible, and here Basilides is rising up like really there is something more powerful. And guess what comes to mind? I am familiar with its code name. As of right now, we do not possess any of Basilides' original manuscripts, since shock of all things, they all vanished without a trace. To put it another way, his adversaries made certain that they were eliminated. Consequently, the information that we have comes from the early church heresy hunters, individuals such as Irenaeus, Tertullian, and Hippolytus, who were not particularly fond of him himself. Because of this, putting your faith in them to comprehend Basilides is analogous to receiving information about the Jedi Order from Emperor Palpatine. In addition to that, it will come with a plan. Basilides, on the other hand, is said to have established a whole cosmic hierarchy, which can be described as a chain reaction of divine entities issuing one after another, much like a celestial family tree. And at the very pinnacle was the Father who is not begotten, the ultimate source that cannot be known. And it was from him that divine forces such as the mind, the word understanding, wisdom, and power originated. It is clear to you now. It is said that this procedure proceeded for a total of 365 levels. You are absolutely correct. Every day of the year is represented by one of the 365 heavens. To add insult to injury, who is in control of all 365 heavens? In his work titled Adversus Heresies, or Against Heresies, Irenaeus claims that the Basilidians believe that their chief is Abraxas, and that this is the reason why he possesses 365 numbers inside himself. Therefore, Abraxas is the head of the 65 heavens. What about the God that is described in the Bible, Against All Heresies, is the title of a book that was written by the church father Tertullian. The fact that he included the word in its entirety suggests that he was trying to outdo Irenaeus. Furthermore, Basilides, a heretic, asserts in this book that there is a supreme divinity who goes by the name Abraxas. Tertullian writes about this heretic in this book. Now, among the lowest of the angels, those who were responsible for the creation of this world, he placed the deity of the Jews at the very bottom. He asserts that this God is an angel, but he denies that he is a god. According to Tertullian, Basilides taught that Abraxas was the greatest god, and that the God of the Bible was not even a god. Rather, he was merely a low-ranking angel who was in command of the physical universe. Just as you are beginning to comprehend the reasons behind the Church Fathers' lack of enthusiasm for the venerable Basilides, here is where things take an even more absurd turn. A hidden code is contained within the name Abraxas itself. Permit me to expand. Take into consideration the fact that Irenaeus asserted that Abraxas possesses 365 numbers inside himself. What exactly does that say? As you can see, each letter in ancient Greek has a numerical value, and if you add up the numbers that are equivalent to the letters A, B, R, A, X, A, S in Greek, what do you think you will get? 365 days. Every single day of the year is represented by one. That was not merely a number, rather it represented the 25 skies. All of them are under Abraxas' authority. There are 365 days in a year, which suggests that he is in charge of time itself, as well as the 365 components that make up the human body. But hold on, there's plenty more. There are exactly 7 letters in the name Abraxas, which corresponds to the 7 days of the week, as well as the 7 planets in the classical system. The Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn are the planets that make up the solar system. The heavenly bodies were not the only things that this individual ruled over. He also ruled over the planets. In addition to having dominion over the human body, Abraxas ruled over the entire heavenly order, which included the skies, the planets, the years, and the days. Therefore, Basilides disclosed a complete model of the universe, with Abraxas at the top, who emanated smaller spiritual creatures, in order according to church fathers, such as Irenaeus and Tertullian, as well as the rest of the grumpy old men club that existed inside the early church. The God of the Bible, who is depicted as the creator in Genesis, was hiding at the bottom of this heap of angels that governed the lowest realm, which was our planet. To put it another way, according to Basilides' explanation, the God that was worshipped in the Hebrew Bible was not the supreme God at all. Rather, he was merely one of the lower angels. In other accounts, it is even stated that the Basilidians believed that Abraxas was the one who sent Christ. According to what Tertullian has said, Christ is affirmed to have been sent not by the one who created this universe, but rather by the Abraxas mentioned above. With a capital H, this was a heretical statement. To adherents of the traditionalist faith, Basilides' actions were comparable to the detonation of a theological bomb. If you were a low-level angel and you found out that some strangely called deity was above you, you would be rather furious about it. Basilides was considered to be off his rocker by the first fathers of the church. In addition, Irenaeus asserts that the Basilidians engage in the practice of magic and make use of images, incantations, and several other forms of peculiar art. When all is said and done, it does sound fairly fantastic. For example, if Irenaeus was trying to make them sound awful, you might want to avoid listing everything that makes them sound like they are made of metal. Okay, so we have Abraxas being referred to as the supreme deity, the origin of all that exists in the world. However, hold on, didn't we just explain that Abraxas is also a being of darkness at the beginning of this video? The combination of God and Satan. First of all, where did you get the idea? Therefore, in order to work this out, we need to keep in mind one very important thing. His adversaries are the source of all the information that we have regarding Basilides' teachings. Therefore, attempting to comprehend Abraxas by relying on the writings of the Church Fathers is like to attempting to learn about Dungeons and Dragons from the Christian booklets that were published in the 1980s and stated that playing the game would cause one to become a Satanist. If you are trying to find out how the game is played, this source material is not precisely the most accurate one currently available. The question is, why is this so significant? Because it's possible that the founding fathers of the church got it wrong. Permit me to expand. Basilides believed that Abraxas was the highest being, the origin of not just the material universe, but also all existence, including the transcendent realm and the God who surpassed all other gods. This is according to the majority of sources. It sounds really amazing, doesn't it? Now, however, hold on, for Abraxas is also closely tied to the world of the physical plane. All the numbers that scream space-time in the physical realm are connected to him. He is connected to the 365 days of the year, the 365 parts of the body, the 7 planets, the 7 days of the week, and all the numbers. And the Gnostics, the majority of them, believed that the material world was a prison, a fabrication of a false god who kept us imprisoned in an illusion. In point of fact, numerous Gnostic scriptures relate numbers that are associated with the material universe, with malevolent creatures who are referred to as archons, rulers, or demons. In the Gnostic source known as the Secret Book of John, for instance, it is said that the total number of demons is 365. In order to finish the psychical and material body, they collaborate in order to finish each aspect of it. Some people believe that the early church fathers, such as Irenaeus, may have interpreted Abraxas as the ultimate divine being, when in reality he was a powerful archon, the ruler of the physical world, but not the true source of existence. This is despite the fact that the majority of sources state that Basilides believed Abraxas to be the supreme being. Indeed, with a book titled The Refutation of All Heresies, the authors certainly did not show much creativity when it came to the titles of the chapters, did they? In any case, Hippolytus alludes to the actual root of all things as the ineffable and unnameable one in his work, The Refutation of All Heresies. He even states that Abraxas is the great archon. Consequently, let's be honest here, if the actual source is unknown, then it most surely is not going to be called Abraxas. In other words, was Abraxas truly the greatest god, or was he merely a cosmic prisoner who ruled the material world in the same manner as a spiritual guardian? The situation is made even more difficult by the fact that not all Gnostics were in agreement over whether or not the archons were perfectly evil. On the one hand, some people viewed them as dictators who subjugated humanity, while others believed that they were simply carrying out their duties and ensuring that the material world continued to function normally. It is possible that Abraxas was a good archon, or it is possible that he was a horrible archon. It is also possible that the Church Fathers had no idea what they were talking about, and that they were just playing a divine game of telephone in which the message became more muddled with each new retelling. Don't worry if you're feeling a little perplexed about this situation. You're not the only one. In light of this, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could acquire some information from the Gnostics themselves, rather than from these cretins who are hunting down heretics? To put it simply, you are unfortunate, since here is the point at which things become even more intriguing. As you can see, for almost 2,000 years, the only source of information that we had about Abraxas and the Gnostics was the people who were opposed to them. In 1945, however, a discovery made in Egypt ended up changing everything. It was discovered that the Nag Hammadi library contained a collection of literary works that were considered to be Gnostic. These books were written in the Gnostics' own words, and Abraxas actually appears in a couple of places. The things that they say about him are disturbing. In the past, if you wanted to gain access to Gnostic secrets, you had to become a member of an underground secret society and take the risk of being burned at the stake. However, fortunately for you all, you need to do now is click the like and subscribe button. The links to my books and downloads on inner transformation are included in the description of this movie. In addition, you can check out my books and downloads. Thus, what information about Abraxas can be gleaned from the real Gnostic sources? The Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit, which is also referred to as the Secret Gospel of the Egyptians, contains a passage that describes Abraxas as a mighty being who resides in the realms of light. This passage is also known as the Secret Gospel of the Egyptians. Therefore, according to this interpretation, Abraxas is an extremely powerful entity, one that surpasses the God described in the Bible. But he was not the origin of creation. Rather, he was merely one of the most potent emanations of reality. That is to say, Abraxas is a nice guy in this scenario, as he is assisting in the rescue of humanity from the material realm. The Book of the Apocalypse of Adam is yet another Gnostic work that makes reference to Abraxas. In this book, Adam discloses to his son Seth that the God of the Bible is truly a malevolent creature who is responsible for enslaving souls. This revelation is a revelation that Adam provides to Seth. There is an entire video that I made about that, and you want to watch it. However, at one point in the story, Adam portrays three extremely powerful creatures of light that will come down to save humans from the wrath of the God of the Bible. And can you guess who was one of them? This is Abraxas. Therefore, during the destruction of the cities that were most likely Sodom and Gomorrah, this book states that Abraxas, Sablo, and Gamaliel will descend and bring those people out of the fire and anger that is being directed toward them. All right, there is a lot going on in this situation. Is it Abraxas first? Abraxas, who is he? As it turns out, Abraxas was not given the name Abraxas when it was first created. What is the true name? It is abrasive. In other words, there was an error made at some point in the process. Over the course of time, Abraxas was erroneously reproduced or translated as Abraxas in a number of different literature. Abraxas is the name that the majority of people call this hidden god today. All throughout this video, I will be utilizing that particular technique. Abraxas is the product that I like to use most of the time, since you know it is accurate. For your information, if you come across the terms Abraxas and Abraxas being used interchangeably, this is the reason. Both of them are the same being and the same concept. The only information we had was from the heretic hunters, who obviously make mistakes. Okay, so basically the first thing we had was information from them. Additionally, they were the equivalent of trolls in the comment part of Facebook, and they could not even manage to get the name consistent. It was stated by the majority of them that the Basilidian Gnostics held the belief that Abraxas was the supreme entity and the origin of all things. On the other hand, this is not entirely obvious, because there are instances in which it appears that Abraxas might have been the supreme ruler of the 365 archons, and the heresy hunters might have been confused about this. But then we receive information from the Gnostic scriptures themselves, and it defines Abraxas as a tremendous entity of light that is located far above the archons, but he is not the source of existence. Okay, so what exactly is going on here? At this point, it is possible that many Gnostic sects simply use the name Abraxas for a variety of distinct creatures or ideas. It's similar to how the angel of one religion might be the demon of another one. Therefore, the Gnostics, who were responsible for writing the Apocalypse of Adam and the Secret Gospel of the Egyptians, most likely did not belong to Basilides' sect. It is possible that they just took the name Abraxas and reinterpreted it in their own way. So we have a variety of definitions to choose from here. There are three possible interpretations of Abraxas, the supreme being an archon and a heavenly aeon of light. Abraxas is the supreme entity. It is therefore not surprising that later readers would have been rather perplexed regarding the nature of the individual in question. But as we will see in the following section, this combination of concepts is actually going to result in something very remarkable. In point of fact, Basilides most likely differentiated between the unnamed true deity, who is the origin of everything, and Abraxas, who is a powerful ruler, but is not bad. As a similar point of view, the Scythian Gnostics considered Abraxas to be an embodiment of the real God. It is highly probable that both groups considered Abraxas to be a good person. However, regardless of the specifics, the church regarded Abraxas as a malevolent figure. In essence, it was the whole issue that, well, if you don't understand it but it's not Christian, then it must be something that the devil's concerned with. Something that I get rather frequently. Look at the comments and you'll see what I mean. Consequently, Basilides' teachings were deemed to be perilous and heretical, and his followers chose to maintain a low profile and communicate their knowledge known as gnosis in a covert manner. It got to the point where by the time the medieval period and the Renaissance rolled around, researchers who came across Abraxas in ancient books simply said, "Oh yeah, this must be some satanic nonsense. I will add it to the list of demons." On the other hand, here's the thing: you can attempt to eradicate an idea, you can vilify it, you can burn the books, and you can hunt down the believers, but these prohibited ideas will always find a way to make their way back into the world eventually. And as for Abraxas, he flourished. The reason for this is that even while the official church did everything in its might to eradicate him, his name eventually made its way into occult practices, magic, secret societies, popular culture, and even psychology. It is at this point that things start to get truly fascinating. What really transpired with Abraxas when Basilides and his group vanished from the scene, although it was possible for the name to disappear, it did not. Instead of going to the surface, Abraxas fled underground into the world of occultism and magic, and the name that was forbidden to him took on an entirely new meaning. While members of the church were busy condemning it from their pulpits, members of the occult were writing it down on scrolls and carving it into gemstones. They were persuaded that this word possessed an extraordinary amount of power. They are gemstones with the name Abraxas and unusual imagery that were worn as amulets or charms to ward off evil and for protection. The so-called Abraxas stones are one of the most remarkable artifacts that we have. The following is an illustration of a jasper gem that was carved between the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE and depicts the peculiar appearance of Abraxas. It is possible to make out the head of the rooster, the body of a human dressed in armor, and 2 snakes dressed as legs holding a whip and a shield. On the other hand, let's speak about this for a moment. Why does he appear to be in that state? Within the next few moments, we are going to reveal the magnificent hidden meanings that are associated with the figure of Abraxas. A rooster's head, to be sure, is what you see there. Let's go on to the reason why he has one. But before we do that, I just want to be completely honest. I don't like it. Having a chicken face is not something that comes to me when I think about the great transcending God of duality. The fact of the matter is that when it comes to symbols such as these, what truly matters is what strikes a chord with you. Abraxas is a cosmic swirl of light and darkness, which is a fantastic way to think about things. Imagine them as being half God and half Satan. This is another way of thinking about them. No matter if you find the rooster head appealing or not, there is no judgment. On the other hand, the name Abraxas, which is considered to be a form of demonic heresy in churches, was being employed as a spiritual shield on the street. In spite of this, we are nevertheless confronted with this peculiar combination of light and dark ideas. The situation is considerably more peculiar. The Gnostic demiurge, often known as the wicked creator in the God of the Bible, appears to have been engraved on the back of this stone. This is something that can be seen. It is characterized by having the body of a serpent and the head of a lion. In addition, the false god of the Bible is depicted in the secret book of John as having the appearance of a dragon with the head of a lion and eyes that flash lightning bolts. In order for you to be able to view the 7 rays emanating from his head, which are symbolic of the 7 traditional planets and days of the week, here is yet another one in which he is encircled by 12 different creatures. Most likely, this is a reference to the 12 signs that make up the zodiac. Therefore, on one side of some of these amulets, you have Abraxas, and on the other side, you have what appears to be the Gnostic interpretation of the God of the Old Testament as a hybrid of a serpent, a dragon, and a lion. Of course, that is not all. There were a lot of do-it-yourself spell books in the Roman world during the early centuries of the Common Era. These books combined aspects of several traditions, including those from Babylonia, Egypt, Greece, and Egypt. They were distributing them covertly as if they were PDFs that had been stolen. Additionally, Abraxas is mentioned in these manuscripts as one of the names of power that are kept a secret. In the course of their incantations, magicians would employ the name Abraxas in addition to other holy names. Therefore, it is clear that some of these amulets employ terms such as Eao, Abrax, and Adonai, combining the names of celestial beings from the Hebrew and Gnostic traditions in a single invocation. The intention was to cover all the bases by calling the greatest names that they were familiar with, and Abraxas was also included on that list, along with the names of God that are found in Hebrew. Consequently, beginning in late antiquity and continuing through the Middle Ages, the name Abraxas maintained a kind of enigmatic presence. Many years later, when scholars came upon Abraxas in ancient magical manuscripts, they attempted to classify it. Which god was it? Is it a demon? It is a facet of the same God. There was a wide range of opinions. Abraxas was recast as a demon lord by medieval demonologists, which is not only a wonderfully fantastic job title, but also interesting. One more illustration of Abraxas in his demon form is presented here. Yes, they continue to make him appear to be an idiot. First, his followers give him a rooster head, and then these demonologists come around and pronounce him a full-fledged demon. They also determine that he should have a look that is similar to that of a hybrid between Dobby and Smeagol. In any case, are you aware of what is taking place here? To others, Abraxas was essentially God, the highest of the high. He was the highest of the high. There were many who regarded it as a terrifying demon, while others saw it as a magical word that offered safety. Power, a strange and ambiguous power that does not really fit neatly into any one category, is the common thread that runs across a lot of these situations. When it came to ideas, Abraxas was always a concept that straddled the boundary between light and shadow. But now things are getting even worse because by the 20th century, he is appearing in secret groups, occult rituals, and even the teachings of the notorious magician Aleister Crowley himself. This is a really strange development. Let's get down to business. By the beginning of the 20th century, the name Abraxas had become much more than a phrase that was said in the shadows of alleyways. As time went on, it finally made its way into modern psychology, as well as occult associations and secret societies. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was the most notable of these organizations during this time. The Golden Dawn was a mysterious secret society that was supposed to be guided by entities known as the Secret Chiefs. For those who are unaware of this, the Golden Dawn lived. Kindly let me know if you would like me to create an entire video devoted to them. From this point forward, the Golden Dawn drew inspiration from each and every spiritual tradition that they could locate. You name it, magical practices from Egypt, the Jewish Kabbalah, Christian mysticism, and Greek lore. And can you guess what name was included into one of the most potent rites that they performed? Our good friend Abraxas is the one in question. A strange ceremony that the members of the Golden Dawn modified and referred to as the Bornless One was altered by them. Now, this ritual would later be altered by Aleister Crowley himself, who was a member of the Golden Dawn and was known as the most famed magician in the world. Crowley was also known as the most wicked man in the world. Crowley was now fascinated with finding ways to reach direct communication with an occult notion known as the Holy Guardian Angel. This angel is essentially your higher self, our divine inner guide, and Crowley was determined to find a way to make this contact. Crowley ended up being preoccupied with the Bornless ritual, which, as you might have guessed, involves the invocation of Abraxas. This was done so that he might make this contact. Crowley considered Abraxas to be one of the precious secret names of power, one that had the ability to allow the magician contact with their holy guardian angel, and ultimately mastery over spiritual worlds, angels, demons, and the entire crew. During the process of completing the Bornless One ritual, the magician aligns themselves with this cosmic authority by invoking a number of potent words, one of which is Abraxas. According to Israel Regardie, an occultist, the Bornless ritual is both the most heartbreaking and the most fulfilling experience that one can have in their lives. As a result, a portion of this ritual is written as follows: Hear me, Io Abraxas, Sabrium, make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether upon the earth and under the earth, on dry land and in the water of whirling air and of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God may be obedient unto me. Some pretty potent stuff there. Following the completion of the Bornless ritual, the magician would have gained such a level of divine power that they would be able to truly meet the four great lords of hell, who would then be commanded to submit to their will. To put it another way, the magician is in a position to command even the chiefs of hell because he invokes the titles of God, such as Abraxas, and identifies himself as the Bornless One. However, despite the fact that Abraxas was simply one of many names that were used in this ceremony, he was such a perfect fit since Abraxas is a being that is paradoxical. The fact that it has been associated with a variety of things throughout history enables it to transcend concepts such as heaven and hell, darkness and light, and good and evil. Abraxas was the embodiment of the highest form of spiritual alchemy due to his ability to combine polar opposites, transcend duality, and bring together the human and heavenly aspects of the magician's nature. In point of fact, the peculiar iconography of Abraxas is what encapsulates the meaning of the character. A rooster head, which represents the arrival of dawn, the awakening power of light and spiritual enlightenment, as well as a human torso, which represents mankind's snake legs, which indicate duality and wisdom, a whip and shield, which represent both defense and offensive, and yes, a rooster head. You may have noticed that the image of Abraxas shares a number of similarities with the image of Baphomet, another god associated with the occult. There are a lot of people who believe that Baphomet is a representation of Satan, however, he is not. In the same way that the picture of Abraxas is everywhere, the symbolism of combining two different things is also everywhere. There is a depiction of Baphomet with the head of a goat, which is a primitive and earthy animal that is frequently used to symbolize wildness, aggression, and sexuality. Baphomet, on the other hand, possesses human arms and a human torso, which represents human reason and intellect. Moreover, Baphomet possesses both male and female characteristics, thereby combining the forces of both the masculine and the feminine. And the word solve et coagula, which is an alchemical phrase that means to break down and recombine into a unified whole, is engraved on its arms. As a symbol of the union of the spiritual and the material, Baphomet points to the heavens and the earth, where he represents the concept of as above, so below. To answer your question, Baphomet does not symbolize the devil. Who or what exactly is Baphomet then? The Knights Templar and other secret societies were known to worship Baphomet. Here's something else to consider. To add insult to injury, a great number of individuals are of the opinion that the word Baphomet is in fact a coded secret that may be a reference to a Gnostic aeon of light known as Sophia, or wisdom, who originates from the same world as Abraxas. It can get really out of hand. Please let me know in the comments if you would like to see an entire video about Baphomet. Consequently, at this moment in time, Abraxas is transforming into a potent emblem for a being that is beyond the concept of duality. The concept of bridging dualities is about to make its debut in the field of psychology, and Abraxas is going to be introduced. So still in the early 20th century, a well-known Swiss psychiatrist by the name of Carl Jung found himself drawn to old Gnostic beliefs as a means of making sense of all the chaos that was occurring within him. And can you guess which Gnostic divinity, which had been almost forgotten, made an appearance in his inner explorations? Yes, you are correct, Abraxas. He came back as if he were a ghost from the past, but this time he spoke according to the principles of psychology. Are you familiar with the concepts of introvert and extrovert? Those are the ideas that Carl Jung came up with. The way that we think about the mind was fundamentally altered as a result of his work as a psychologist. Archetypes are said to be universal patterns that appear in stories, mythologies, and even our personalities. He is credited with popularizing the concept of archetypes. Additionally, he stressed the significance of the unconscious, which refers to the more profound aspects of our minds that are responsible for shaping our beliefs and behaviors without our conscious awareness. What about one of his most significant ideas? It is the shadow self, the more shady and hidden aspects of ourselves that we try to conceal. As for the shadow work, in order to become complete, It is a process that involves confronting those aspects, gaining an understanding of them, and integrating them. Does that begin to sound familiar to you? Jung left behind a mystery book that he titled The Seven Sermons to the Dead, which he authored in 1916. However, not his own self. Who do you think it is, the Basilides? Basilides, the ancient Gnostic teacher who lived in the 2nd century, is the one in question. The individual who initiated all of the Abraxas activities. When Jung wrote the 7 Sermons to the Dead, he did not even include his own name as the author of the book. In its place, he inserted Basilides. To put it another way, he appeared to be receiving this text as if it had been sent to him, almost as if it were a message from the unconscious or a revelation from the magical realm. Jung stated in a later statement that one evening his home was filled by the spirits of the deceased who had come to seek instruction. Jung created the 7 sermons as a response to this, as if he were Basilides of Alexandria himself. After all, who better to impart hidden knowledge than an ancient Gnostic master? Is it not true that we have a tendency to think of God as being all good and the devil as being all evil? To put it another way, Jung took that concept and utterly turned it entirely upside down. What really is at the heart of it all, Abraxas is a force that transcends both God and the devil, as well as morality and immorality. This is a God whom you do not know, and we call him Abraxas. Jung put it in his writings. After over 1800 years, Jung basically brought Abraxas back to life, but not as a god or deity to worship. Instead, he revived him as a symbol to examine and a means to broaden our awareness of the human psyche. He explains that Abraxas is a paradox, a god that is beyond all other gods. During the course of the narrative, there is a passage that states, Abraxas begetteth truth, and lying good and evil light and darkness in the same word and throughout the same act. Why is Abraxas such a bad character? On the contrary, it is much more ambiguous than God and the devil. In Abraxas, truth and deception, light and darkness all rolled into one that summarizes everything perfectly. It is for this reason that he is considered to be dreadful. The nice, comfy, and tidy moral categories that we have are broken by him. If God is the ultimate good and the devil is the ultimate evil, then Abraxas is something far larger, something that incorporates both of them and goes even further than that to encompass everything that exists. God and the devil are two forces that originate from an infinite balanced fullness that Jung refers to as the pleroma. Jung sees these forces as existing in the universe. And atop all of these beings, both of God and of the devil, stands Abraxas, who brings together the forces of creation and destruction. To put it another way, the concepts that we consider to be God and the devil are comparable to two rivers that originate from the same source, which is Abraxas. In addition, Abraxas does not take a stance. When it comes to all sides, he is the energy. His nature is such that he is both the God who bestows life and the abyss that consumes it. Jung asserted that he is both the sun and the void, which is a canyon that is perpetually expanding and contracting. Jung was aware of how outlandish this was. It was for this reason that he first only shared 7 sermons to the dead in a private setting with his closest friends. On the other hand, the concept that underpins it is essentially a profound psychological truth. Not everything in life is either good or bad. Each and every person harbors both extremes within who they are. The fact that Jung brought Abraxas back into the discussion was a way for him to draw attention to an important realization that is still applicable today. We cannot turn a blind eye to the shadowy aspects of ourselves. As you can see, Western civilization has always been preoccupied with the idea of dividing the world into moral divisions. At the same time that we worship a God who is all loving and all good, we attribute all that is wicked to the devil. Jung, on the other hand, regarded this as a significant issue since it causes us to be oblivious to our own darkness. He is credited with being the one who first presented the idea of the shadow self, which refers to the hidden and disordered aspects of our mind that we tend to repress. The more we refuse to acknowledge them, the more power they have and the more damage they may cause. According to what Carl Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by visualizing images of light. Rather, one becomes enlightened by becoming cognizant of the darkness. The message that Jung's Abraxas is trying to convey is that without a doubt, the origin of both creation and destruction is the same. Or to put it another way, one may say that what the God Son says is life. The words of the devil are synonymous with death. However, Abraxas is the one who speaks that empty and cursed phrase that is both life and death at the same time. It is not necessary to take a side in Abraxas. He is the essential component. There is a one energy that encompasses everything from the holy to the profane, from the light to the shadow. Jung believed that this was the most important factor in achieving self-realization. The objective is not simply to be completely virtuous by denying the existence of everything that is evil within us. Bringing together the entirety of the psyche, including the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, the persona, and the hidden self is the objective. According to Jung, Abraxas is the God that every one of us had forgotten about. We are not referring to some type of external divinity, but rather a representation of the entirety of the self. Give it some thought. The majority of us would like to think that we are decent people. In an effort to make it appear as though the darker impulses we experience are not present, we push them away into the shadows of our unconscious. Jung, on the other hand, would tell you to stop fooling yourself. There is still a degree of darkness in the house. You have placed it in the basement and locked it. Moreover, disregarding it. When you do that, it gains more influence over you. Abraxas serves as a wake-up call, drawing attention to the fact that the highest truth is not found in just clinging to the light and rejecting the darkness. Recognizing the unity that lies underneath them is the key. The yin and yang symbol is a common one in Eastern philosophical thought. A seed of the other is contained within each side, and both sides are components of a larger whole. In addition, Jung was undoubtedly familiar with Eastern philosophical ideas. He most likely interpreted Abraxas as a metaphor for the coming together of polar opposites, such as yin and yang. When you really stop to think about it, it's sort of crazy. As a result of Jung and his message to comprehend life, a Gnostic heresy that was previously feared has somehow become a tool for self-understanding. You have to come to terms with the fact that creation and destruction, angels and demons, those who are holy and those who are wicked, all originate from the same source and are contained inside you. In his writings, Jung always highlighted the importance of confronting our own shadows rather than projecting them onto other people. The deity Abraxas, who is said to be the one who brings together the gods and the demons, is a powerful mythical manner of expressing this idea. Nevertheless, Jung was not attempting to establish a new religious cult in the vicinity of Abraxas. Instead, he was providing us with a psychological instrument, a means of better comprehending who we are as individuals. And this concept of combining light and shadow was going to spread beyond the realm of psychology and make its way into popular culture in ways that no one could have anticipated. Okay, so this is when things start to get really crazy. At this point, it is possible that the word abracadabra is not just a random magic phrase. Some esoteric experts are of the opinion that it can be traced back to Abraxas. Now the video for Lady Gaga's song Abracadabra dives headfirst into the idea of combining lighter and darker elements. By its very nature, the song is an incantation. She repeats the word abracadabra again and over again, so multiplying its potency in a manner that is similar to an occult ritual. However, the graphics are where the real enchantment lies. A number of symbols of duality are present throughout this video. These include the black and white checker patterns, which symbolize the equilibrium of opposites. The mirrored inverted A's in Lady Gaga, which is a direct reference to the law of as above, so below. The Hermetic principle, which states that the unseen world, the spiritual and the unconscious, directly shape the physical. And finally, the black and white costumes worn by the dancers, as well as Gaga herself, who portrays both a light and a dark version of herself. This is pure Abraxas energy, and I spent a whole movie analyzing the esoteric symbolism in Lady Gaga's video, so I highly recommend that you check it out. Therefore, the most important question is whether or not there is a power that is more powerful than the combination of God and the devil. Following all of our investigations, we are able to affirm that this is the case, yet it is not some divine person that rules from above. Rather, it is a principle. Therefore, Abraxas is not a literal deity. Rather, it is a metaphor of completeness that transcends duality. Today, Abraxas has come to symbolize the concept that reality is not divided into a cosmic good guy and a cosmic bad guy, but rather that they are essentially just two parts of the same whole. This is due to the fact that over history, Abraxas has been defined in a variety of different ways. This wholeness is not something that exists outside of us. Rather, it is something that is within each and every one of us. Over the course of history, Abraxas has taken on every possible form. A supreme deity, a cosmic threat, a magical word, or an abstract symbol are all examples of this. It is almost as if Abraxas laughs at everybody who attempts to categorize him as a single thing. Rather than being a physical deity or a demon, Abraxas is best understood as a symbol for a state of awareness. This is the ultimate way to comprehend Abraxas. The concept of Abraxas can be understood as the idea that the process of achieving full awakening or enlightenment entails integrating all aspects of ourselves and reality, both light and dark, into a cohesive whole. During the time that the Gnostics were looking for redemption, they desired to reach the world of light and leave the realm of darkness behind. On the other hand, the Abraxas notion, particularly in its contemporary manifestation, eliminates this duality and introduces a different kind of waking one, in which you awaken from the separation of light and dark in its entirety. This indicates that things like light and darkness, as well as creation and destruction, are all aspects of who we are. And if you find that to be unsettling, know that you are not the only one. The purpose of this is to impart a sense of unease. Because of this, Abraxas is said to as awful. In doing so, it dispels the notion that we can just choose one side and disregard the opposing viewpoint. Having said that, it is important to note that embracing the darkness does not imply that you should begin behaving in a mean-spirited manner, acting like a jerk, or going into full-blown supervillain mode. Absolutely not at all. Contemplate it in this manner. You can make an effort to hold solely to the light, to be soft, compassionate, and unselfish to the fullest extent possible. On the other hand, if you choose to ignore the fact that you have darker tendencies, you will just project a more significant shadow behind you. The aspects of yourself that you choose to ignore do not go out of existence. They simply go underground and wait for the appropriate time to detonate. Take fury as an example, for instance. The majority of the time, society tells us that rage is a negative emotion that we have to repress. Those who are moral does not experience it. However, here is the reality. Anger is nothing more than energy. In addition, just like every other form of energy, it can either be harmful or beneficial depending on how it is utilized. If you choose to repress it, it will eventually become resentment, passive aggressiveness, or even self-sabotage if you allow it to mature. However, it is possible to transform it into power if you recognize it, comprehend it, and channel it with a specific purpose. It was not by the act of repressing their fury that great leaders, artists, and revolutionaries came to be where they are today. They put it into action and moved it forward. Artists channel their sense of annoyance into their work. True competitors know how to transform inner fire into strength. In your personal life, standing up for yourself doesn't mean letting anger take over. It means channeling that fire in a way that serves you. To embrace Abraxas is to face and integrate your shadow, not hide it, not deny it. Your fears, desires, anger, and ambition aren't flaws to erase, but facets to understand and unify. As Carl Jung wrote in the 7 Sermons to the Dead, redemption comes not by resisting the darkness, but by acknowledging it. Shadow integration is a conscious act of reclaiming the parts of yourself you were taught to suppress. Jung called this process shadow integration, and through it you gain the ability to strengthen your light by owning your darkness. The parts of you once buried no longer sabotage your growth. When you blend light and shadow, you don't just balance them, you rise beyond both. This transcendence is what Jung named individuation, becoming your whole authentic self, no longer ruled by unconscious conflict. You are not pulled between darkness and light. You become the source that contains both. Like Abraxas, you are not limited to dualities. You are the totality, the creator of your own universe. The ancient war between light and dark was always missing something: unity. When we accept that we are both shadow and light, we become complete. That's the moment of true wholeness. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What part of your shadow have you begun to reclaim? And if you're drawn to uncovering more hidden knowledge, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a journey into the unknown.